If you are somebody who wants to move to Spain, then you have definitely heard of the digital nomad visa. The digital nomad visa really started gaining popularity when it was came in Spain, I think around 2021, just after COVID. And ever since then, it got thousands of applications. And then now it's getting harder and harder and pretty much can't get it anymore. It is very, very hard to get. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying. I have firsthand knowledge about the visa application process that is going on here in Spain because I had gone through the process to get a visa and now trying to get a new visa because the other one has expired. And so I have a lot of friends here who are on the digital nomad or have been applying to the digital nomad, and now it is pretty much like impossible. The digital nomad visa really gained popularity after COVID because everyone working remotely, it gave people the option to work in another country. So first, the original way people were doing the digital nomad visa was remote work through their company. If they could prove that they could work remotely and were allowed to, the company would have to approve it and send over pay slips and different things. Then you could do it and it is approved. However, they did make new changes about 4 months ago where you can pretty much only now get the digital nomad visa if you have an LLC and work for yourself. I'm not sure why that is. We've all been really confused because you would think working for an established company is more stable in a sense for income because they do check your last few pay slips and you have to make a minimum required amount. That's why before a lot more people would do it through a company, even if they had an LLC in their name, because normally the income was a little bit higher and more stable for most American companies as well. If that's where you're working remotely from, the income is normally higher, so you would normally easier to qualify, especially for the cost of living in Spain. They do new changes every year saying what the minimum is you need for those requirements, what they deem as being comfortable to live anywhere within the country of Spain. However, there is another side to the digital nomad visa. One, the biggest thing are taxes. Taxes are extremely high for the digital nomad visa. Your first year, it is lower, and then the remaining two, it can change. It also varies if you can qualify under Beckham law or original, but normally it is around 24%. So depending on what you are paying in the US, it could be quite high, and taxes are quite a bit here. Also, Spanish taxes are done 4 times a year, every 3 months, not once a year. So it is a lot more of a burden, and most people here do have an accountant, especially if you are foreign. One, because of the language. All your documents here, of course, have to be submitted in Spanish. All your taxes done in Spanish versus in English back home. But then you still have to pay taxes back in the US. I think that is a big misconception that people come here and like, oh, I don't have to pay taxes in the US. No, the US is one of 3 countries in the entire world where you have to pay taxes if you have a passport. So as long as you keep your American passport, your US passport, you have to pay taxes there. That's just how it is. And also, the US has agreements with Spain. So if you are working remotely, you pay the minimum taxes here, and depending on your income, you could still owe more taxes in the US. This will normally probably only happen if you have a higher 6-figure salary, then that will happen. But you could do both. So a lot of people working remotely, of course, you can probably do your own taxes in the US, depending on if you get the digital nomad visa through an LLC or your company. Obviously, do it through an LLC, it's going to be a lot more confusing. And or if you just have it through another company, it could be a little more simple. You might be able to do it yourself, of course, depending on your own situation and different things like that. But now applying for the digital nomad visa is pretty much impossible, especially for Americans. I have met a lot of people here, and a few of my close friends have been applying to this visa, and they keep getting rejected and then appealing. And then so the process continues for one way or another. You will probably have to have a lawyer help you do it here. However, you have to be really careful with lawyers in Spain because they are not like lawyers in the US. Everything here is super relaxed. And if they do something wrong and your visa gets denied, there's pretty much nothing you can do about this. I had this happen to a friend. Her lawyer submitted something late, even though she gave the paperwork to the lawyer in time. And then she was denied the visa and had to leave in 15 days. So you really have to be careful, really do research on a good law firm here because they are very lax about it. They take days to respond. It's just a very different system than in the US. So if you're used to everything in the US being very prompt and quick and efficient and probably a better chance of getting approved with a lawyer, that is not going to happen here. I think with the digital nomad visa, especially, and a lot of that has to do also too with the anti-tourist movement that's really been gaining traction this past year. It has been really prominent in Barcelona and I believe it was Mallorca, where they had tons of protests. It was really bad last summer, especially when it was the height with all of the tourists that were here visiting last year. It is really hard. The application process also for the digital nomad visa is quite extensive. So definitely do research ahead of time and see what kind of paperwork you need so that you also spend less with a lawyer, because if they're going back and forth telling you everything you need and what needs to be submitted and how, it's definitely, of course, going to cost you more money there because a lot of lawyers work by the hour. So that is something to take into consideration. Make sure you can get as much paperwork as possible done by yourself first. Some stuff, has to be sent to them and they can translate it, or they tell you what specific office is, because some of the visas you have to get background checks, but then from the US government, but then those have to be translated to Spanish, or sometimes in Barcelona, even Catalan here with the government. Getting records of all your health insurance, your pay slips, places to live, everything like that is really going to be important to do ahead of time. But honestly, getting it submitted is going to be purely just luck, because I have friends who work for themselves, work for companies, are here as a couple with another, like a couple, like one got approved for the digital nomad visa, the other one is still appealing. So that's been a whole process as well, but don't expect it to be fast. Also, if you've looked it up, it is also better to apply once you get here in Spain, because if you apply from within Spain, you get a 3-year visa versus just a 2-year visa if you apply when you are back in the United States. So that is another consideration to take in. So you just need to make sure you get the paperwork submitted before the end of your tourist visa here in Spain. And then lastly, the application process, there is no timeline. So if a lawyer says, oh, I can get this and you'll get approved within 90 days, they are totally lying. That is not probably going to happen. A few cases, but probably not. It is, and the government here can be extremely slow. So you can apply. They normally have normally the government will try to respond within 90 days to at least say something. But if they don't, you can submit a request to get more information, but then that can take another 90 days. And so the process here can be extremely long time. I've had some of my friends here, they submitted their visa almost 2 years ago, and they are still going through the process of appealing and trying to submit more information to get it approved. And one other thing you have to be aware of during this application process is if you do want to leave the country while your visa is processing, you have to go and get these police notes. I can't remember the exact name, saying that you can exit and come back. You can normally only get one of those per year because the visa process takes so long. Unfortunately, it could take more than a year or multiple years. So if you have an important trip outside of Spain while your visa is processing, that is something to take into consideration, because you don't want to get in trouble at the borders when you are coming and going while still waiting for your visa. You have to get official paperwork here that says that you are allowed to come and go because your visa is in the process of being approved, or just in review to get denied, but it has been done and you are doing the correct legal thing to be staying here. Hopefully this gives a more realistic view of the digital nomad visa. I'm not trying to say don't try to get that visa if you are coming here, but just know that it is extremely hard to get. It can take a really long time. It's really not something easy to do anymore. It is a really hard visa to get, especially with all the anti-tourism movements and the new requirements that they've been changing about every 6 months recently regarding that visa. So I think it is a very divided and hot topic. So if anyone says it's early or that's what they're doing or you don't need a lawyer, they are probably lying, because my experience firsthand with the visa process and friends who have been trying to get that visa or have gotten it, none of that was true. So hopefully this just gives you a more realistic perspective and just something to take into consideration so you are more aware of the whole process. I hope this helps and kind of get some insight and a different perspective, because most people, they come here and they're like, oh, I'm just going to do that one. It's so easy. I work for myself, but no. Once you do the research, everything, it's really not that easy. So hopefully this helps and can kind of give just another perspective on any research you are doing if you're considering moving to Spain or Barcelona specifically, and kind of what all those processes look like.